Hey guys, thought I'd bring you along for this. It's a second to the last tool that I need in my workshop, and the workshop is absolutely disgusting, so forgive me. But this is the Ridgid JP0610 6 1/8 Jointer. Just got here, so I'm going to obviously unbox it, put it together, and see how it performs. Again, thought I'd bring you along. This is a heavy puppy, let me tell you. I think the guy said it weighs 280 pounds. So they dumped it off in the drive. I just brought it in with a hand truck. And right on top we have our hardware. We have a belt, some sort of a bracket, well, I'm surprised to see that the crank is actually made out of metal. Another adjustment knob. Of course, your do not eat desiccant. Promise we won't eat that. Another knob. Oh wow. I didn't realize it came with push blocks. So they have a foam bottom, which feels very similar to if you've ever done grout and used a grouting tool with the foam that they put on the bottom. It feels very similar. And I'm telling you, man, every horizontal surface in here is used up. Our instruction pack, as long as it's got a good picture. Ridgid, guaranteed for life, lifetime service agreement, free parts, free service for life, registration required for lifetime service agreement within 90 days of purchase. Some sheet metal. This assembly may be more than I bargained for in terms of making a video. I don't want to bore you guys. Had a couple of comments on some of my other videos that I blab too much. And I apologize, but that's just me. I like to convey what's going on and convey my thoughts. Lots of sheet metal. So I promise I'll try to make all of my future videos as short as possible so that I can't be accused of excessive blabbing. Yet some more sheet metal. And yet some more sheet metal. Everything looks good so far. I don't see any dings, dents, scratches, or anything like that on it. Then we have a ginormous block of foam that my recycling disposal service does not accept. So I have to break that up into a million pieces and put it in the regular trash. Yeah, this looks like it's going to be a real chore to assemble. No idea what this is. 2 plastic pieces in this bag. It's got some kind of angle gauge all over the place. 15, 30, 45, 67 and a half, 22 and a half, 60, 30. Going to need a real good picture. The blade cover. Make sure you don't mill your little fingers off. And this, I guess, is the heavy stuff. This looks like the fence. I'm pretty liberal with this silica desiccant. No complaints though. I don't see any rust anywhere yet. There does seem to be a light coat of oil on the fence. It's like the dust collector, which appears to be too big for what I've got. It's 3 7/8 outside diameter. Then we have the motor, which weighs 8,000 pounds. Came from Home Depot, by the way. free delivery to the house. Home Depot is about 40 miles one way from me, and I like it when they bring it right to the house. Looks like it spins straight, the pulley is straight, there's no wobble. There's almost zero end play, that's impressive. So let's see, apparently you can wire this up for 120 or 240. It's got a 120 plug on it. It's a 1 horsepower. Thankfully, because I don't have 240 in the shop here, not yet anyway. And then the bed. This is going to be really, really heavy. Holy shnikes. Yeah, that's really heavy. That's obviously the heaviest part in this. Yeah, the bed is really heavy. So, it's supposed to be 6 1/8. The overall bed width is 7 5/16 by 45 3/4. Alright, so let me regroup here and we'll be right back. Alright, so we've done a little check on the instructions, and to mount this piece is not very clear. They have a little line in the drawing that makes it discernible that this is the top. Other than that, it's a little confusing. And this gets mounted with these carriage bolts, which have a shoulder on them to catch inside so that you only have to turn one side. You don't have to hold the other side while you're doing that. The little wrench that came with it does not fit this. So you're going to need, for this part anyway, a 1/2-inch wrench or socket. And it doesn't look like it's going to line up very well. Point out that this gets mounted like so, and it's on this side. The next side is pretty easy to recognize because it's got these 2 grooves that they say hold your push blocks, like this. This is where the motor mounts to, so that's going to be on the bottom. Then they're telling me to put this together here with a couple of more carriage bolts. And given the fact that I'm out of room in this shop, I'm going to have to mount this. Well, I'll show you when I get there because I've already got a plan. Where's it off and running? Alright, so now they're telling me I've got to install this front panel, again using these carriage bolts. And they say that this panel must be on the inside. Meaning like this. And you know what I'm going to do to make this a bit easier? I'm going to flip this upside down. Yeah, that makes it a lot easier to get into things. Alright, so at this point, it's time to mount the motor. And just tip, hint, the Allen wrench that comes with this it fits the Allen heads on the motor pulley. And I just checked them to make sure they were tight because I didn't want to have to deal with that after the fact. One was tight, one wasn't. So I would recommend checking the pulley on the motor before you assemble it. Now they're it's saying in the instructions to put this on its side and put a 4x4 under it to make installing the motor easier. I don't have a handy 4x4, so I'm going to probably do it the hard way, and I'm going to lay it on its side like this. Carriage bolts again, 4 of them. 4 bolts, 4 nuts. And I don't foresee this being a good time. I'm going to have to hold the motor, put a bolt through, and get a nut on it. 3 processes with 2 hands. Now, according to the diagram, the pulley goes away from the front. And just for the heck of it, I just plugged this in, turned it on to make sure it worked before I had that heartbreak. And found out that it didn't work after it was all together. So if I can get one in here just to hang it in place, I'll be happy. And as I said, the motor is pretty heavy. And if I had a second set of hands, I would be ecstatic. But I'm going to let the motor hang on the screw or the carriage bolt. That wasn't as bad as I thought. So I let it hang, supporting its own weight by the mount, and then put the nut in from the opposite side. The bottom ones may be a little more challenging. You know what, I think at this point, since it's on by 2, I'm going to stand it back up. Yeah, that's a way to do it if you don't have a 4x4 lying around. And you know what, I'm putting these in upside down. The carriage bolt should go through the top. Because if you do have to adjust the belt, you're never going to get to these nuts putting it together the way that I'm putting it together. Okay, I'm not putting on the feet because I'm definitely going to be getting a set of wheels for this so I can move it around. But the way that they tell you to put the feet on is to thread one of the nuts down onto the foot, put a washer on it, put it through the bottom, which is going to be over here, put another washer once you sandwich it through the bottom, and then put another nut on the top. Once you get it to where you're going to keep it, you can adjust the nuts to level the planer. So I just wanted to show you that because, like I said, I'm not going to be using the feet. So what they want me to do now is, and refrain from putting on the back cover, because you're going to need that access. So you have these 3 bolts, they look like 3/8 coarse thread. And that's going to hold the bed to the stand. So now we're going to lift the bed, hopefully, and set it on the stand. Obviously, I did not tighten the bolts down on the motor because we're going to need to adjust the belt. And they say that you want 1-inch deflection for a properly adjusted belt, which means between the pulleys in the center, you want that belt to move 1 inch in and out, and then you have the correct adjustment. I should point out here, here, and here are the attachment points for the bed. So you want to make sure that after you go through this lift that you've got your 2 on this side and your 1 bolt hole on this side. This is pretty heavy. It's not crazy, but it's heavy. And of course you know you're right because your pulleys are going to match. So let me get these bolts in here, get this snug down, and we'll be right back. Alright, now the bed's on. The 3 bolts that hold the bed down are 9/16. I recommend putting the single bolt in first because you have to reach up through here to get to it, and it's troublesome. But if you get this one started first, then you can easily access these other 2 from the back side, providing you haven't put this cover on prematurely. And it makes it a lot easier. So now they're telling me to mount the switch with 3/16 screws, which are these. Probably can't really see them, but... So according to the sequence in the instructions, now it's time to put on the rear panel, which makes 0 sense because the step right after that is saying to install and adjust the belt. The belt is extremely accessible without that rear panel on, and extremely inaccessible when it is on. So we're going to deviate from the directions because once this is in place, it's just going to make it all that harder to get to the bolts to adjust the belt, you know, slide the motor around to adjust the belt. So when it does come time to put this panel on, I know I was banging around. So when it does come time to put this panel on, this is going to be the upside with the cutout. And this, of course, is to allow for the belt to have clearance. So let's see how this goes. And I really like the fact that this is belt driven because it gives you options with the motor. So I'm just checking to see if the weight of the motor alone is going to be good enough for the recommended belt deflection. And you know what, it actually is. Alright, so we have the belt adjusted, and I'll be honest with you, I made it a little bit tight because typically all rubber composite style belts stretch a bit. So I'm sure that once this stretches, I will have the deflection that they recommend. So now we're going to run the cord through the back. And again, I can't believe that they want you to install this. It would make life so much easier with it off, or it has made life so much easier. Lost my warning. Let's see, where's the screw holes? It's like right there. The screws are actually in the plate. That doesn't make sense. But they are, and they have flat washers on them. And of course they just both fell off of the screw. No biggie. We will overcome, adapt, and win. And I gotta tell you, man, I was in the military, and if any place will teach you patience, it's the military. My dad, I was born late. My mom was in her 40s when I was born. My dad, believe it or not, was a tail gunner in a B-17. And he was shot down over Germany on his second or third mission. And he was a POW for over a year. Stalag 17B, believe it or not. I remember as a kid going fishing, and I'd cast my line out and things would just go awry, and I'd have a bird nest of fishing line. I don't want to say we were poor, but we definitely were nowhere near wealthy or comfortable. Typically, if that happened to me, I'd cut it off, use what's left, and then go buy a new spool of line. But I watched my dad sit on a chair and untangle this bird's nest for hours, wind it back on the reel, hand it back to me, and say, "Hey buddy, try not to do that again." And never once cursed, turned red, nothing. He was an extremely patient guy. And between his genes, I guess, in the military that I served in, I think some of it rubbed off, because I don't get upset too very often, but when I do, it's legitimate. Now, I guess some of you guys are probably curious about the bed, how flat the bed is. And I took off the plastic and I cleaned off most of the oil. For what I'm going to be doing with this, I'm not making fine furniture, cabinets, maybe, but this is more like for cutting boards and, you know, kind of crafty kind of projects. But I'm going to check it out. Let me zero my vernier here. So I'm going to use this little piece of cardboard, and this is 15 thousandths. This I bought, and it's supposed to be extremely flat. I've already rotated this so the blade is out of the way. So that's a good sign. Maybe a slight dip right here, but it's not, it's less than 15 thousandths. So yeah, the bed is actually pretty flat. And I can tell you that the machining on the top of the bed is very nice. I don't see any light through it. So that's going to work for me. Alright, the motor is tightened down. You would never, not unless this was upside down, you would never get to those bolts, nuts, with that cover on, because you can't get a socket in there even with a universal or a swivel. I had to tighten them down by wrench. So we're going to grab 6 more carriage bolts and we're going to throw this back cover on, and we'll be right back. Alright, so this panel is on, the back panel, and you're definitely going to need a 1/2 inch wrench. So now they want us to put on the pulley guard, and I guess we have to snake that up in here. And then we'll get our remaining 3/16 screws. Let us see what they want to do next. We'll be right back. So now they want us to put on the elevation wheel, which is square, and they call this a panhead screw. It's a Phillips and a flathead, so in case you don't have one or the other. Alright, so that's on. Alright, so now they want us to put on the dust chute with these 2 wing nuts. They call them wing screws, but wing nuts. And they go up in the top. At least that's where it's threaded for. Alright, so now it's time to put the fence on. Has this groove here, which fits over this joining piece. And it actually locks in pretty easily. And they call this a T-nut. And the handle. So you're going to put the handle through there. Your T-nut will line up with the bottom grooved area. Alright, for all intents and purposes, it looks like the last thing is the cutter guard. That's going to go through this hole here. And mind you that there's a knob down here that's spring loaded. This is only going to go in two ways. Because of the slot, it can go in this way or this way. So you're going to want to preload this knob so that when you install it, the spring pushes it towards the fence. Let's see if I can figure this out. Like that. Because you want it to come back as you're pushing your workpiece through. At the bottom, there's a screw that goes into here and keeps the guard from popping out of place. Alright, so I've got this piece of basswood that's boogered up on this edge. So let's check it out. I've got the cut depth adjusted to 1/8 of an inch. So let's see how it does what it's supposed to do. How smooth we can get it. Yeah, that doesn't work bad at all. This is going to be pretty darn good for what I'm using it for. So guys, if you hung in there through this whole video, I appreciate your patience. And I'll probably be making a couple of more on setting this up, getting it adjusted, and I know you can do rabbit cuts and stuff like that on it, so this is going to be pretty interesting. As of right this minute, I'm glad I got it. I'm glad I bought this model for the price. And I got to be honest, I don't think it was super cheap, but I think it was $7.99. So, a lot of the used ones around here were going for $1,000. I mean, for this antiquated, old Craftsman, can't get parts for it. But, yeah, anyway, enough rambling. Today is Monday, the January 3rd, 2022. You guys enjoy your evening, and we'll talk soon. Take care now.